So, surprising no one, I fit into a very specific type of gaming subset of gamers where I play a lot of games with a single competitor, usually my wife or a good friend. So I have a decent collection of little two-player games. Probably this is like the ultimate couples game, though, in my opinion. Agricola, All Creatures Big and Small. This thing is great. It's kind of confrontational in the right ways, but really and truly, there's a lot of playing against your fellow player, as well as maybe avoiding the things that they're doing, just so they don't get mad at you. Anyways, we'll have to dig right into this box and really show you what's going on with this and its expansions. Alright people, now that we're kind of into the box, I'm happy to say that, yes, both expansions for this game do currently reside in this box. The box is pretty well deep, made of somewhat sturdy cardboard, and it's actually a component for scoring here. This is important as you collect groups of the animals in the game. You're going to have to score them based on this little track here, which is not included on the standard score sheet. This is kind of like a bonus point that you get on top of having that number of animals. And it's written on all sides of it as well. If you're thinking about throwing out the box, make sure you get a copy of this before you do that. So this is where the players will be playing on. This is the little farm board where all the animals and resources come out. In Agricola fashion, you're going to be looking for these little red arrows to tell you where things go, if new resources come out, and if new things come out if they're already full, such as here in the animal spaces. So basically, the big ones to note are you can get wood from the forest, coal from the mountains, various supplies from the river as you trade. You can get more farm expansions and land from here. This area allows you to build fences. This area allows you to build buildings. This area allows you to build special buildings. This one allows you to build little shelters for your animals. And then this is where you actually will trade for animals and get them. I say trade, and that's just a thematic thing, but you'll actually just be putting your worker there and getting them. You'll start over in this area where reeds will come out, and then eventually sheep, pigs, and then more sheep, cow, and then a pig, and then horse, and then another sheep. So as you can see, there's going to be a lot of sheep in this game, which is pretty much up to Agricola fashion. Now over here, we have a baggie full of these little animal meeples and various tokens. We have our little yellow first player token, which has a male and female side for people out there that really care about that. This could be easily replaced with some other component if you like, and are a little picky about your first player token. But the one big thing to note here is you get a huge assortment of these little animal meeples, or animeeples. So a lot of times you're going to be putting these in your little personal farm areas to represent how many you have. And if you have more than 2 of these every turn, you'll get a chance to breed and get one more. And that's in total, not actually when you have multiple sets of 2. So that's another Agricola-ism that comes out in this game for people that are veterans of Agricola. You also have these ×4 counters for each of the animals, which aren't as fun as the animeeples, but can sometimes be necessary in these more closer contest games, especially when people are fighting over lots of sheep or pigs. Now I've kept all my resources here for the game in a little wooden container, or plastic container. You got your little fence pieces here. These also represent a little timer to the game, as 9 of these will be set aside and can be earned later on, but they also work as a timer for the game. I've got all the resources here for such as the wood, the coal, and the reeds, which are little wooden discs. I would honestly say if you are up for it, you can replace these or put stickers on them, but we'll get into that later. Also in here I put the little shelters, which have a unique purpose later on that I'll explain. Here's the main player board. There's 2 of them. These are the 2 farms that the people will be building on. Now each of them has like little patches of grass and a starting building. This is a cottage. Can hold one animal, is worth 0 points, of course, because it's what everyone starts with. But you get to have a family pet at least. As you begin playing with this, you're going to be starting to build fences to kind of section off areas of the board so you can actually put animals in there. Now, it is something to note that the fences provided by buildings actually count as fences, and that's going to be a unique strategy to play with later on as you're kind of sectioning it off strategically. Now, arguably, something that people are not going to be able to get maybe on their first play because the rulebook is a little weird about this, but if you have a little sectioned off area, you'll be able to get 2 animals in there to start with. It'll also double if you have one of these shelters in there. So then I'd be able to store 4 sheep there. But say I was lucky enough to actually extend this outward, then I would be able to hold not only the sheep in here, but also the sheep over here for a total of, in this case, 2 by 2, which is 8. But then you put this little guy in there. That's actually kind of a doubler. So you're going to be able to go up from that 8 to, I believe, 16 or something like that. It's a little interestingly worded in the book. But basically just kind of know that as you place fences, the larger the area, generally the more animals will be able to be in there. And this little guy will usually double the amount there. You cannot put sheep and horses and sheep and cows or any of the 2 animal types together because they just don't work that way. So when you section off an area, only one unique animal can go to each one. So in this case, I would have a pet horse to be a legal play. Also in the game, whenever you play on a certain area, you will get these little extensions to the game board, and you can collect a number of these to expand your fields, but also each one of these that you completely fill up is worth a certain number of victory points at the end of the game. Each expansion comes with at least 1 more of these, so you're going to have a decent supply of these. Another thing to note, though, is there's this little road and woods here. This is important for some gameplay functions because there's tiles in the expansions in particular that will say that if some areas next to the road are open or next to the forest are open, you'll get points or deducted points based on that. So that's just one of those little Agricola isms. That's kind of a small thing to keep track of. So I'm going to kind of go into some of the basic tiles of the game. I have a number of little worker placement pieces here that we've replaced from the main game here. You'll get in the box, though, these little wooden discs to represent the workers. You'll get 3 of each color. My copy, however, did not come with one of the tiles, which I'll explain later in the review. But for this case, we'll use these little wooden hearts that I painted up and show off here. You're going to get 3 of these every turn to play around with. These represent the workers that you're going to put on the map here, and you'll take turns putting one down between you and your player 2 and taking their unique abilities until all of the things are filled up. I apologize, folks. It's not the most steadiest situation since we don't have a good zoom on the camera yet. But once they're all out there, you will collect everything from them when you put the tile down, and then you'll wipe the board and then repopulate the board every turn. And you're going to be doing that for 9 times in order to complete the game. Now, the idea being to collect these resources such as wood and coal and reeds, or actually get these little tiles here. These tiles represent extra buildings that you can build that are going to give you more victory points and more fences. One thing in particular to note is that you will actually have this little stall here that starts off as a stall, but then later can be upgraded into a stable. Now, the difference being is that a stable can hold more animals, but it's also more expensive, and it's worth more victory points. All the buildings are kind of like this. They'll usually have an area for points, an area for how many animals they can carry, and then usually a build cost. In order to build these, most of the time you're going to go to a special place on the board that tells you how to build like a stable or change stables into stalls. And all of the special ones in the game that are beyond that, you're going to have to go to these little spaces that allow you to build a special building. Now I've got a little bag here of the non-unique special buildings, which are basically these stalls and a few of the starting areas, such as open stalls, a little extra house, and a shelter to put your guys. But there's this huge baggie I have here of a lot of the expansion content, and these are extra buildings that the game provides you when you buy the expansions that allow you to try to diversify your strategies. And the great thing is you don't feel like bagging these up. On the back, there's actually a little scarecrow or a crow itself on the back of these to help you sort them out from the rest of the game. I've played with a decent amount of these tiles, and I have to say that based on how you set them up is really going to depend on what your gameplay experience is like. When you have no expansions, you're going to have basically 8 buildings out there, the non-unique ones, a lot of stalls, and you're going to be kind of racing with your opponent to build these stalls and get the most animals. Then when you add the first expansion, you're going to get kind of like more animal unique abilities, where like you're going to be able to store certain types of animals for more points, or when you build a building, you'll actually get bonus animals. And then in the last expansion, they actually have special abilities that kind of have more to do with that whole forest versus road aspect, or trading animals, or having even open pieces of land, and trading things around. I definitely suggest, if you're going to get into this game deeply, that you purchase these expansions, because they're going to add a whole new variety of flavor to your game. Plus, the rules will have you kind of mix and match or shuffle them in. The first expansion will say you play with 4 extra buildings, whereas the second expansion pretty much says you can play with like up to 8 shuffled in if you have both of them. So that's a huge amount of variety there, and that's going to be a huge amount of gameplay that's going to come from this. And again, this all surprisingly fits in the box. However, none of this usually comes in a baggie. A lot of this is self-bagged. The animals and the wooden bits come bagged, but everything else kind of needs its own baggie. So I heavily suggest that you go out and get yourself some baggies, or you build yourself some sort of foam core thing. Alright, and we'll take it into the final thoughts. Alright, so Agricola, all creatures big and small. There's a lot to say about this game. It's a kind of a condensed version of a larger game, but it's also a really great designed couples game. I only specify couples because that's usually the demographic for this kind of game. What's not to love about being like a farmer and trying to like grow and raise these things? This takes out all of the other aspect of actually, plowing the earth and planting vegetables. This one focuses solely on the cute little animals that come in here, and they're all nice, component-made, quality wood, elegantly colored in such a way where they're believable little animals. You could actually feel like you're building a little farm. Surprising no one. I'm a real big fan of this game. The expansions for me, though, really set it over the bar. If you have not gotten this game with some expansions, you're going to be a little bit behind on some of the variety that comes into each play. Those buildings that come out every game are going to be different for you, and it's going to really change your strategies as you play with your opponent, and you're going to develop these styles that really are variable, but they're only going to be for that game. And just like a regular in Agricola, you're going to be trying to focus on many different collections and try to build them up all at the same time, while maybe focusing on 1 or 2 in particular to really bump up there for the most points. And the buildings, they just give you a good strategy to build these styles up, and maybe focus on maybe a building strategy, or a cow strategy, a horse strategy, a sheep strategy, or even a pig strategy. I haven't really tried that myself, but hey, those pigs are cute enough. Oh, what is there more to say about this? It's a really simple worker placement game. A little simple kind of engine building game in a sense too, where you're trying to get these animals early in the game and then start breeding them up as quickly as possible for the 9 rounds of the game. I suppose if you wanted to play longer you could, but Ideally, the components really allow for you only to play with those like 9 rounds, and that really kind of fits nicely in that half-hour, 45-minute range, which a lot of two-player games need to be in. Components are kind of loose in the box, though. That's one of my biggest concerns with that. So most of the time, I know people make foam inserts for this game. In my case, I've just gone to baggies, but I've gotten like really specific baggies. It works for storage, and when you get the expansion tiles, you're definitely going to want to kind of keep those separate from the normal ones, mainly because the rules actually tell you to. Everything feels rustic in this. So for artwork quality, even though you got kind of the typical goofy Agricola style artwork, it's definitely made for couples, and all things said, it works. It's not beautiful, but it's more of the fact that it meshes with its components well, and it gives you really that theme that you're kind of looking for a game like this, where you're both competitively farming at each other, trying to keep up with the Joneses. So we're going to give that about a 6. It's workable. But a lot of that's also coming from the component side. The components in this, top-notch. You got good solid wood bits, you got good solid cardboard. Things are not going to really scratch up on you. My only concern was when I got my copy of Agricola, All Creatures Big and Small, it actually was missing a single blue disc. So we've had to kind of improvise. So that's why in our review, I've replaced these with hand-painted little hearts, which are pretty cute, and they work as well. So, but with that and the wooden animals and the wooden fences, the only thing you could really do to maybe make this game a little better was to take those reeds and wood and coal and change those into something else. Instead of the little discs, you could make those and get a little upgrade kit for that to make it more thematic for you. However, I think it's just serviceable as is. I know people that will probably print off stickers or something for those. They are a little dark, so if you're playing on a darker surface, you're going to have to play with a mat or something to keep them from running away. I keep them in a little plastic box, so that way they don't get too far away when I lose them. You are going to frequently run out of a resource, and they include little ×5 counters in the punch board for those, and that works out really well. So presentation-wise, the wood and the bits mesh with the artwork, and that's why we give components a good jump there in our review process. Gonna go pretty solid, 7, mainly because of the wooden discs, and with the cardboard, it would have been better if they had like an insert or something to kind of keep track of everything. And the fact that they use the box itself as a scoring implement is not a bad idea. But if you happen to lose the box over time, or things wear down and you move it to another container, you're going to want to find a way to keep that scoring bit on there. And the score pads themselves, those will also run out in time, but they're not necessarily required for scoring in this game. And there's a lot of scoring apps out there that can help with that as well. So that's why we're given that components that number in our review. Oh, gameplay mechanics. Well, it's a stripped down Agricola. It's a worker placement. Each person has 3 workers, as seen in the video. It works well. You don't get any more, you don't get any less. And you really got to decide every turn what is important for you, during the first part of your move, or is it important that maybe you use one of those to get the first player marker again? A lot of times in the game I find that going first or second can make a difference, but generally that when it makes the most difference is when the unique buildings are out in play, and that really is ramped up in the expansions, hence why I included them with the review. When you get the expansions, really and truly the only thing you're getting is more cardboard. So you're getting more buildings, and you're getting more farm extensions, which for scoring purposes, those are really remarkable, and you should utilize those if you're going to build like a interesting strategy. But I'm not here to tell you how to play the game for that. Um, just that the expansions are pretty cheap when it comes to the base game. I mean, the entire thing retail is like $30 for the base game and then $15 for the expansions. So you're looking about $60, which is going to probably buy you a new copy of Agricola. But, you know, if you're lucky and you get them on sale or you do other things, it's definitely worth it, in my opinion. Particularly since this is just a great, solid little game that you can play with two people. Whereas Agricola in itself is not really a great two-player game. I mean, I've had fun with it two players, but not nearly as much as I had with All Creatures Big and Small. So, that being said, the mechanisms work well. The buildings work well. They're all explained in the rule books. Everything's really good, well written, too. However, you're going to look at a bit of saniness, but that's going to go into the next part of the review. So, we're going to give overall gameplay a solid 7. It's not something I'm going to play all the time because there's a lot of worker placement games out there. But Agricola is kind of that great granddaddy that does a good job of this, and it finds a really sweet spot at that 3 actions per turn, and that's always a reliable. Unlike other games like Agricola, the full game, in which that kind of varies, and turn length is going to vary a lot. This is very well balanced and a good experience for 2 players. So very solid as a 2-player game. Replayability, however, if you do not have the expansions, you're going to play this about maybe 8 times and then start to see things get a little samey. With the expansion 1 in there, you're going to play it about 20 times before you even really think of that getting samey. And when you get into the final one, I haven't really reached a number yet. Each of the expansions adds at least another 15 tiles worth of buildings that are unique, and you're going to be randomly dealing those in. You can kind of keep them separate from each other, or you can mix them together into one big hodgepodge. And with the full expansion rules, you're going to have a lot more building variety, which really kind of amps the game up to a very, very deep game, as well as something that's fun. So, as you and your players expand it, if you're playing with your spouse or significant other, or if you're playing with just a really good friend, it's best to start with the base game, play that for a while, see if you like it, and then move on to the expansions. And as you get the expansions, you're just going to see more and more of this gameplay and more this replayability come into there. I wish price wasn't an issue for some people, because all of this in a single box would be just one really great game in itself. But considering the way they released it, it's the only way you're going to be able to get the game at this time. So with expansions, replayability is very high. I'm going to give that an overall 8. Without expansions, though, I'm going to have to go 5. It's one of those games that you're going to pull out maybe every few months at that point, instead of maybe once a week or once a month at least if you have the expansions. So that kind of brings us down to our final critique. This game, I have to give it a solid, 6.5, nearly 7 in my book. There's other 2-player games out there. God knows there is. So many 2-player games. I cannot even state, the sheer number of them. This one fits really well, though, into anybody's collection. It's a unique farming experience. It's good for you and a kid. It's good for you and an adult. It's something that you can keep in your collection for years on end, especially with the expansions, and always pull it out and have a unique experience with somebody new or somebody old. And that's something you need in a 2-player game. As we go further into the reviews, you're going to see a lot more 2-player games coming out, and honestly, All Creatures Big and Small is one that I know a lot of gamers, as well as myself, always kind of come back to for a good husband-wife game, or, being progressive husband-husband or wife and wife. Whatever your situation is, if you have a significant player too, you're always going to want to play like this type of game every now and then. where it's pretty competitive, but also something that's lighthearted and fun and cute. Now, if she would gladly step on screen and give her little opinion of what she feels, I would like to invite my wife on.
Hello.
Hi. So this is my wife. She's my main player 2 for a lot of these. Do you want to share?
Okay.
Alright. Sorry about this, folks. As I said, this is my main player 2. She is a cutthroat, dirty, heartless woman when it comes to games. But I'd like to take like maybe a minute of your time and ask, out of all the gameplay that we've had with this, where do you feel that we're at on scale with each other?
I think there's days when you give me a run for my money.
Again, she usually beats me at a lot of the 2-player games we have.
Armies of sheep, all the sheep.
And usually it's some sort of strategy that she's more focused into. But, despite the number of times that we've beaten each other or one of us has gone on a winning streak, we still come back to this game. And that's one of those things. It was one of our very first hobby 2-player games. So, is there any comments that you would like to leave?
It's definitely nice and lighthearted and doesn't bog you down with too much rules or isn't hard to learn. It's really good for people who aren't used to playing board games.
Yeah, that's something I should probably have brought up earlier in the review. Not all spouses are gamers. It's really great when they are.
I try.
And really and truly, that's the kind of thing like about Agricola, All Creatures Big and Small, where it thrives. Unlike, say, a Battle Con or a Sylveon, or even the Duke some days. This game is familiar in a way where you can always kind of come back to it, and it's really easy to teach, it's really easy to score, and it's going to work well with other family members as well. Now, I haven't played it with kids, I haven't played it with people over the age of like 60, but I'm sure in time I'll have those experiences, and I'll definitely attest that those are probably going to be just as unique and special to me as I've played this game with my wife. So I give the game 2 thumbs up from my end.
2 thumbs up?
Alright. So definitely go check out All Creatures Big and Small from Agricola and Uwe Rosenberg. It's definitely worth your time. Alright.